All right, y'all. So Joe Rogan is in the news again, and this time, in my opinion, it is legitimate for him to be in the news. He just endorsed Ron DeSantis for 2024. So let's see exactly what he said, and then I'm going to explain to you, using DeSantis' record and his policy positions, why that's a terrible idea, and he would not make a good president.
Yeah, so all this stuff is happening while we have a dead man as a president.
Yeah.
That part is true. Biden is dead.
You know, it's just
Are you throwing out any
it's not fun.
Any support towards anyone, or are you going to hold off and because I know, didn't Elon Musk come out recently for DeSantis?
Yeah, I think Ron DeSantis would work as a good president. I mean, what he's done for Florida has been admirable.
Look, I feel like I'm doing breaking news right now. Yeah. That wasn't even on purpose.
I feel like what he did for Florida, a lot of people gave him a lot of grief, but ultimately he was correct. He was correct when it comes to like deaths. He was correct when it comes to protecting our vulnerable populations. He was correct in terms of distribution of monoclonal antibodies, and he was furious when the government tried to pull those. They were trying to pull very effective treatments. You know, he is not perfect. He's a human being, but what he's done is stand up for freedoms. And people think that so there's some weird gaslighting shit that went on where people equated freedom and saying the word freedom to like right-wing bigotry and hate is so strange.
Now, one of the things Joe clearly cares a lot about is he was anti-mandate and he was anti-lockdown. And he uses that word freedom a lot in this clip. Here's the problem with Ron DeSantis. Even though you can say, hey, the fact that he was anti-lockdown is something I consider pro-freedom, can't say that about this. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says marijuana should remain criminalized because of its, quote, putrid odor. Now, this is an issue that Joe Rogan cares a lot about, if not more than the lockdown stuff. And, of course, he's cared about it for a much longer time because it's been an issue for a longer amount of time. So, but even to the claim of like, hey, he's anti-lockdown, and it kind of worked out in Florida. Well, on paper, it is true that the number of COVID deaths, or the rate of COVID deaths in Florida compared to other states like New York, for example, it's almost identical. So without the stringent lockdown, you still had about the same number of deaths in Florida as you did in New York, as you did in even like the strictest lockdown states. I think Michigan was one of them, and Michigan even had a slightly higher COVID death rate. But having said that, it might be a little bit misleading because Miami Herald reports Florida undercounted COVID cases and deaths. Failed to get test results, state audit says. But now also New York did too. New York undercounted those deaths as well. So I understand Joe's position of like, look, I have a principled stance against lockdowns. Fair enough. But how do you account for this? This is an issue that Joe has cared about for the longest time. You can't overlook the fact that this guy is deeply anti-freedom when it comes to marijuana and when it comes to substances. That's a huge problem. And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know if Joe knows that this guy is deeply against marijuana. So I really hope Joe watches this segment, because I'm going to walk through the rest of Ron DeSantis' record. Now understand, one of the issues I care deeply about, and I know Joe cares deeply about, is free speech. Well, let's look at DeSantis' record on that front. DeSantis signs bill banning protests outside any residence. Just so everybody understands, this is unconstitutional. This is against the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has decided this. There was a case from the 1990s where anti-abortion protesters protested outside of an abortion clinic. Now, there are rules like, you can't harass the people walking in or touch the people walking in. You need to keep a little bit of distance between you and the abortion clinic. But they said, look, it's unconstitutional to tell them they can't protest there. Now, by the same token, in that same case, the anti-abortion protesters actually went to the residences of people who worked at the abortion clinic, and they protested there. Now, again, as long as you keep a certain amount of distance, it is your constitutional right to protest outside of their residence. That's what they decided. So DeSantis doing this is flat out unconstitutional and against free speech and against free protest, and he did it directly in response to protests outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. More. DeSantis signs bill ending vehicle driver liability for hitting protesters. I believe this was in the wake of the 2020 BLM riots, in the wake of George Floyd being killed. You had these anti-free speech, anti-protest bills pop up in a lot of the Republican states. And again, a lot of these laws are unconstitutional because they end up cracking down on innocent, peaceful protesters. To borrow an old phrase, it's like using a hatchet when you need a scalpel. Anybody who commits actual crimes, burns some shit down, does some property damage, that's against the law. You can arrest them for that stuff. But what they're trying to do here is criminalize protests of a variety and flavor and ideology that they don't agree with. That's exactly what DeSantis was doing here. Ending vehicle driver liability for hitting protesters? So almost green lighting people to drive over protesters if you disagree with the protesters? That's beyond preposterous and, again, deeply against the First Amendment. More. Florida rejects 41% of new math textbooks, citing critical race theory among its reasons. Now, this is just like goofy-ass witch hunt stuff. But it even goes deeper than this, because remember, Florida just had the whole fiasco around the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, right? Now, the harshest provisions of that law were stripped out, and they passed like a watered-down version of it. But now we have to look at how it's interpreted and how it's implemented. And now we have the answer. This actually just came out. Look at this, guys. Representatives for Orange County teachers sounded alarm bells Monday after word spread from principals that Orange County Public Schools would impose strict restrictions on classroom behavior after Florida's new parental rights and education law, aka the Don't Say Gay law, took effect. In private, administrators-only seminars last week, OCPS attorneys advised principals what behaviors would and would not be legal under the law during a camp legal presentation. According to representatives of the county's teacher association, teachers and staff members will be disallowed from wearing rainbow articles of clothing, including lanyards distributed by the district last year. Elementary level teachers reported being discouraged from putting pictures of their same-sex spouse on their desk or talking about them to students. Safe space stickers aimed at LGBTQ students may have to be removed from doors. Teachers will have to report to parents if a student comes out to them, and they must use pronouns assigned at birth, regardless of what the parents allow, the CTA reported. Some of the measures appear to be far outside what the law actually forbids, as it focuses primarily on mental health monitoring and classroom curriculums. Quote, "It will be alarming if our district chooses to interpret this law in the most extreme way," CTA President-elect Clinton McCracken, awesome name, said. "We want them to protect student privacy. We want them to make sure that they're creating and helping to create safe classrooms. We believe our school board supports that." So look at what's going on. Now, again, a lot of these things are no longer in the bill. They were originally in the bill. They were stripped out. A watered-down version of the bill was passed. But in terms of the interpretation of it and the implementation of it, this is what's actually happening. And obviously, these things are absurd. Can't wear rainbow colors? Have to take pictures of your loved ones off your desk? Have to out students? Have to refer to students as their birth pronouns, even if it's widely accepted from the parents and everybody that they don't want to be called that? So, in other words, the criticism from the left about this bill from the beginning, in terms of its implementation, it's exactly correct. Because the idea was, look, this is a moral panic. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Are there some goofy teachers that libs of TikTok, digs up that who maybe crossed the line and said some bad things or did some bad things? Sure. But this is a moral panic and a hysteria around the LGBTQ community and their status as teachers. The idea that they're all grooming kids or whatever, and now this is a draconian crackdown on that. That's exactly what we're seeing in terms of the implementation of it. Now, I know Joe does not support these things. There's no way he would support these preposterous things I just laid out for you. So I'm trying to give him DeSantis' actual record so he understands what he's really about. Now, to this point, we've largely been talking about DeSantis' record on social issues. Well, now let's look at his record on economic issues.
If Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants you to believe anything about him, it's this.
And I will fight for the taxpayers and families of our great state.
But that's not what's happening. What's happening is Ron DeSantis is running a multi-billion-dollar corporate welfare extravaganza. So rhetoric like this?
We'll stand up to corporations. They are not going to dictate the policies in this state.
It's just part of the myth DeSantis has cultivated that he'll fight for working-class people. The fact is that since DeSantis took office, corporations in Florida have reaped $5.7 billion from tax cuts, loopholes, and giveaways from the governor and the Republican-controlled state legislature.
Now, Joe Rogan is correctly against all of the insane bailouts that happened during the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession. He understands that that's corporate welfare and corporate socialism, and working class people got hosed and the corporations got propped up. He understands that. What you're about to see here, and you're already beginning to see, is that this is what Ron DeSantis effectively has done already in Florida as he's hosed working class people.
His squabble with Disney is just the latest example of this rhetoric and hypocrisy on corporate accountability.
Disney should not be exempt from the laws that every single person in Florida.
What DeSantis isn't saying in his attacks on Disney is why he left their $578 million in tax credits untouched if he wants to take them on.
Because he's a liar, that's why.
And that's just Disney. The largest corporations in Florida are getting millions from DeSantis' government regularly. In 2020, at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, DeSantis permitted a massive $543 million in tax refunds for major corporations, agreed to in 2018, to go into effect, even as his own state's unemployment system crumbled.
Many have been out of work for weeks. Some have yet to see a dime.
In 2019, the Republican-led legislature okayed another massive tax refund for corporations, not for people. That payout in May 2022 will be $624 million for the biggest corporations in Florida, and they won't even answer questions about it.
Are you guys afraid of tough questions? I just wanted to ask the governor about the $624 million tax refund for wealthy corporations, including the $10 million that Disney's going to get from our tax dollars. You guys should ask about that. Corporations are going to get a $624 million corporate tax refund from this legislature, and Disney is going to get $10 million. Christina, you want to comment?
Kicked out for doing actual journalism and asking real questions.
It's not as if these corporations need it. A 2019 analysis found that 99% of companies pay no corporate income tax in Florida. And when the state's unemployment trust fund dried up, DeSantis shifted the responsibility of refilling it from businesses through their taxes to average Floridians through
hose the working class, hose the middle class to fund unemployment, as opposed to taxing corporations to fund it.
a $1 billion a year new tax on online sales. He did this all while dumping on Floridians' calls for more expansive unemployment benefits.
There's legislation to increase unemployment benefits. Do you support that?
Increase benefits? Look, no.
So when he says,
So let there be no misunderstanding. As governor, I will lead with purpose and conviction on behalf of the people of Florida.
it's not true. He's leading on behalf of corporations. Like when he came out against raising the minimum wage.
To do the minimum wage amendment, there's
He's against raising the minimum wage. At this point, this is what, an 80% issue? By the way, in Florida, in 2024, in 2020, I just jumped in my time machine and went forward. In 2020, even though the state voted for Trump, 60% of the population voted to raise the minimum wage. Ron DeSantis is against raising the minimum wage.
problems with that, regardless of even how you feel about it.
More than 60% of Florida voters would go on to approve a minimum wage hike.
There you go.
And when he says this,
If our environment is threatened, I will move to protect it.
it's also not true. He will move to protect corporate interests. Take the sugarcane industry, responsible for pollution that causes cancer and red tide. He talked a big game about holding them accountable.
And I'm the only candidate who fought Big Sugar and lived to tell about it.
In 2021, DeSantis signed legislation shielding those same sugar companies from legal action surrounding the long-term healthcare problems caused by their burning fields.
I can't. The guy is just a brazen liar. He's a complete and utter charlatan. He's a fraud. And he's deeply, deeply corrupt.
U.S. Sugar donated $350,000 to Florida's Republican Party during DeSantis' election. And it's no surprise why other corporations are getting these million-dollar tax refunds or getting support on their anti-living wage campaigns. Corporations donate more money than working-class Floridians. Much more. Over his career, DeSantis has received nearly $20 million from Wall Street, $5 million from real estate investors, and $3 million from lobbyists and lawyers. So every policy DeSantis pushes is a gift to his biggest, richest donors. The big corporate tax cuts? Rewards to virtually every billionaire in the country, many of whom, including Richard Uihlein, Bernie Marcus, and the late Sheldon Adelson, are among DeSantis' largest donors. Private equity firms and hedge funds are rushing to line DeSantis' pockets. One prominent hedge fund leader, Ken Griffin, recently gave him $5 million. Florida Power and Light got its $1.53 billion rate hike after pouring millions into Republican campaigns and super PACs. And even as Florida falls in income inequality, tax fairness, education spending, you name it, Ron DeSantis will keep leading his culture wars, claiming to stand up to big business.
You can't be cowed by these organizations, or particularly by woke corporations, from doing the right thing.
Well, the right thing for DeSantis seems to be turning his back on Floridians and protecting the bottom line of massive corporations.
See, this is what guys like DeSantis do. They lean into culture war stuff, and then they're just standard, run-of-the-mill, corrupt politicians serving corporations and screwing working people. Now, I show you all that. Remember, this Joe Rogan, this is the same Joe Rogan that we're talking about. Look at this. Remember this, guys? Let me make sure it's on 1.25. Look at this.
I really believe if Michelle Obama runs, she wins. She's good. She's great. She's the wife of the best president that we have had in our lifetime. I've never voted right-wing in my life. I consider universal basic income a really good idea. I want free college education. Take it easy. Hello, Bernie.
How are you, Joe?
Wonderful. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I like Tulsi and I like Bernie. That's it.
Oh, yeah?
Everybody else can eat shit.
Look at you, fucking progressive.
Yeah. I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. I think he's looking out for the interests of the working people. And I think he wants people to have a better life and do better. And I'm all for that. And if that means I have to pay more in tax, like people think, oh, you're a socialist. I've heard people say that. Oh, you're a fucking socialist, bro. Like, first of all, he's not even a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. It's a different thing. I would like to spend more in taxes if they could fix inner city communities and take these poor neighborhoods and throw a fuckload of money. Spend more, you fucking Republican piece of shit. 87% of scientists said that human activity is driving global warming. I'm very pro-choice. I'm very women's rights, civil rights, gay rights, trans rights. I'm even universal health care. Obviously, this protected status is driving me crazy. This thing that Trump's doing with children that were born in other countries and then brought over here as children, and then they're talking about deporting them. That drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's
that kind of shit. And the hard right version of that is despicable. These people that I see online, why didn't they apply for citizenship? Oh, who knows? Maybe because they're fucking 13. I don't give a fuck if they broke the law. You don't take parents and kids and separate them. You just fucking don't. You know Alonzo? No, who's that? A funny comedian. Yeah. He goes, not all Donald Trump supporters are racist, but all racists are Donald Trump supporters.
He definitely awakened that side.
But the January 6th thing is important.
See, it is important, but is it the 6 months later? It should be the ruling number one conversation of journalists?
I think it's really important. And one of the reasons why I think it's important because it highlights the reasons why a guy like Donald Trump is so fucking dangerous. Is because a guy can incite a bunch of morons to do something really fucking stupid. But as far as trans people, some trans people listening to this, I got nothing but love for you. For everybody. And in fact, Eddie Izzard is one of my all-time favorite guests.
Oh, I love Izzard.
The right-wing thing is just an easy way to dismiss me because I'm not right-wing. I can't recommend your book, Race Matters, enough.
So there you have it. This is the same Joe Rogan who now is, sort of tepidly endorsing Ron DeSantis for president. And in my experience with Joe, first of all, Joe's a great guy. Second of all, he is one of the most open-minded people I've ever met in the sense that if you make a good argument, he goes, hey, you know what? I was wrong. That makes perfect sense. And I know because it happened with, what was it? Paid maternity leave or paid paternity leave, paid time off, something like that. He made some comment that was against it. Crystal and I responded and showed all like the charts and the graphs and hey, here's what it's like in the US versus all the other countries. We sort of get screwed. We don't have any time off, certainly no paid time off. This is about like looking out for working people, and he changed his mind on that. And this is something that he's done a number of times over the years. So look, I hope that I changed his mind with all these things I laid out for you here because he's a very influential person. He's got the #1 podcast in the world. A lot of people listen to him and take him very seriously. And so for him to support somebody like DeSantis is definitely harmful, because DeSantis is a corrupt goon and he would govern like a corrupt goon like he's doing right now. So again, I hope that this helps change his mind. Understand something, guys. I've given Bill Maher endless amounts of shit because he went from Bernie Sanders to Amy Klobuchar. So I would be a hypocrite if I didn't also give Joe Rogan shit from going from Bernie Sanders to Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, who's worse than Amy Klobuchar in terms of his actual policy agenda. And that's really what this comes down to, and that's what I need everybody to understand. The only way you can really go from Bernie to Ron DeSantis is if you're, making a decision about who should be president based on vibes, based on nonsense eye test stuff. And vibes don't cut it when it comes to politics. The eye test doesn't cut it when it comes to politics. What matters is the policy agenda. What did you actually do? What's your experience? What did you actually do with power? And what do you plan on doing with power? Those are the only things that matter. And so every single one of these positions that Rogan supports in this video, Ron DeSantis is an enemy of. He's an enemy of those things. So, I mean, you just can't square that circle, dude. You cannot square that circle. So again, I hope this changes his mind. I hope that anybody who watches this, who's DeSantis curious, understands who and what he really is and what he really supports. And I guess we'll see. I guess we'll find out. But DeSantis for president is a terrible idea. And I just laid out, at least 7, 8 reasons why that is.